So good afternoon. It's been a while since I've done a video, but I've got hopefully some information that I can share with you. So today I'm going to talk about Noel Wien, who is a pilot and basically one of Alaska's earliest bush pilots. But I'm going to start with a quote by Orville Wright, and you'll see what ironic about this. So, the desire to fly is an idea handed down to us by our ancestors. As I said, Orville Wright. Pioneer aviator Noel Wien is often called the father of Alaska bush flying. Wien arrived in Alaska in the 1920s with barnstorming experience and quickly began flying the rough, unmapped routes that would connect interior and Arctic communities to the outside world. He racked up a long list of Alaskan aviation first commercial flight from Fairbanks to Nome and Fairbanks to Seattle, first flights beyond the Arctic Circle and across the Bering Sea or Bering Strait, and the first round-trip flight between Alaska and Asia. In 1927, he and his brother Ralph founded Wien Alaska Airways, later Wien Air Alaska, the state's first enduring airline, which became a lifeline for mail, freight, and passengers in communities with no road access. Noel Wien was born on June 8, 1899 in Lake, and forgive me, Nebegaman, Wisconsin, and grew up in Minnesota. He learned to fly in 1921 during the barnstorming era, when pilots often earned a living by performing exhibition flights and taking paying passengers on short rides. By 1924, Wien had enough of flying experience to accept work in Alaska, where aviation was still experimental, and the territory's geography made travel slow, difficult, and often dangerous. Wien quickly became one of Alaska's most important early pilots. On July 6, 1924, he made the first non-stop flight from Fairbanks to Anchorage, Alaska, flying in a standard J-1 open cockpit biplane alongside his mechanic, Bill Junker. He completed the historic route in 3 hours and 45 minutes. Now, that reduced a trip that could take days by rail, a dog sled, or walking. So, to only a few hours by air. So they flew it in 3 hours and 45 minutes, as I said. That same flight today is a normal route, which takes about 45 minutes to complete. Later that same year, he made an early bush flight to Livengood in support of mining. The operations became the first pilot to fly north of the Arctic Circle. In 1925, he and his brother Ralph made the first commercial flights from Fairbanks to Nome, demonstrating that the aircraft could reliably serve remote communities separated by mountains, rivers, tundra, and even severe weather. There were very few airports, almost no weather reporting compared to with what we have today. No GPS, limited navigation aids, and huge stretches of Alaska where if you had a problem, you were basically on your own. In 1927, Noel and Ralph Wien founded Wien Alaska Airways, one of Alaska's first airlines and among the earliest airlines even in the United States. The company carried passengers, mail, freight, mining supplies, fuel, and other essentials across long distances where roads were limited or even non existent. Over time, the Wien family aviation business helped normalize air service as a practical necessity in Alaska rather than a novelty. Wien Alaska merged with Northern Consolidated in 1968 and became Wien Consolidated Airlines. Then in 1963, once again, they changed their name to the now familiar Wien Air Alaska. For many places, an airplane was not just a convenient way to travel, it was the connection to the rest of the state. The aircraft Wien operated over the years really shows how fast aviation changed. The company went from open cockpit biplanes and Fokkers to Ford trimotors, DC-3, Curtiss C-46s, and Fairchild F-27s. Then eventually they moved into jets. Wien operated 737 combi aircraft that could carry passengers and freight on the same airplane. I've flown flights like that, even today. They were also equipped to operate from gravel runways. And imagine, if you will, a Boeing 737 flying into rural Alaska with passengers in one part of the aircraft and pallets of freight, food, mail, or industrial supplies into another. The airline served communities all over the state, including Anchorage and Fairbanks, Kotzebue, Nome, Bethel, Barrow, Prudhoe Bay, Galena, King Salmon, and Dillingham. As Prudhoe Bay developed, Wien became important to the North Slope as well. The company already had decades of experience operating in remote Alaska and was well positioned to move workers and freight north. In the early 1980s, they began operating Boeing 737s and 727s, providing flights into and out of the lower 48, Seattle, Portland, Boise, Salt Lake City, Phoenix, and even Denver. Unfortunately, due to deregulation and the skyrocketing costs, the airline stopped flying in November of 1984. That ended roughly 60 years of Wien aviation in Alaska. Noel Wien's influence on Alaska was profound because he helped prove that aviation could overcome the territory's isolation. Before regular air service, communities often depended on dog teams, riverboats, the Alaska Railroad, or seasonal trails. Airplanes made it possible to move people, mail, medicine, equipment, and even news far more quicker. This changed mining, commerce, emergency response, and communication, while also strengthening links among interior, coastal, and Arctic communities. His work also shaped the culture and practice of Alaska bushflying. Pilots had to navigate without modern radios. There were really no reliable maps. Prepared runways were mostly non existent, and little or no weather reporting. Wien's careful judgment, mechanical knowledge, and ability to read the landscape became part of the model for later bush pilots. He showed that aviation in Alaska required both courage and discipline, not reckless daring. Fortunately, Noel Wien died on July 19th, 1977, but his legacy remains central to Alaska's aviation history. In fact, he was one of the first licensed pilots. He held pilot certificate number 39. That certificate or license was signed by Orville Wright. Can you imagine that? It's amazing. A man whose pilot certificate was signed by one of the Wright brothers later watched airlines that carried his family name flying Boeing 737 jets around Alaska. He's remembered by the National Aviation Hall of Fame as a pilot who made landmark flights beyond the Arctic Circle, across the Bering Strait, and between Alaska and Asia. As I stated earlier, he's called the father of Alaska bushflying. Wien, excuse me, Wien helped transform Alaska from a place where distance often meant isolation into a region where aircraft became essential to everyday life. We've honored Noel Wien here in Fairbanks. We have the Noel Wien Library, and there are other markers around the state. So, Noel Wien, father of Alaska bushflying. And as Orville Wright said, The desire to fly is an idea handed down to us by our ancestors. As always, love you. Hugs and prayers.